It may be best to avoid Chinatown this weekend. More crowd control measures will be in place and there won't be a light-up.
DPM Heng Swee Keat says helping workers and businesses to adapt, innovate and grow will be a key priority for Budget 2021.
9 Britons and a Singapore PR have been charged after they were pictured near Lazarus Island on Boxing Day. Welcome to The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Olivia Quay.
I'm Haryanto Diman. Now you can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
2 locally transmitted COVID-19 cases were among 25 new infections confirmed today. One was a community case, while the other was from a foreign worker dormitory. The last dorm case was reported on January 16th.
The remaining 23 cases were imported and placed on stay-home notice upon arrival in Singapore. The Health Ministry will share more details tonight.
Well, there are less reasons to head to Chinatown ahead of Chinese New Year, with more measures announced today to control its large crowds. The Chinatown street light-up will be turned off this weekend and on the eve of CNY on February 11th. The authorities may also restrict access to popular areas in Chinatown like Pagoda Street and Terengganu Street during peak hours on weekends.
9 Britons and a Singapore PR were charged today after they allegedly breached COVID-19 rules by unlawfully gathering on a boat on December 26th. The PR and one of the Brits intend to plead guilty to their charges on March 1st. The cases involving the remaining 8 have been adjourned to February 26th.
Meanwhile, a Malaysian man has lost his PR status following a conviction for breaching his stay-home notice on 4 occasions. He had left his hostel to run errands with the knowledge that he displayed symptoms of COVID-19 infection. He's the first person to have his PR status revoked for breaching COVID-19 rules.
3 F&B outlets, Boom Boo in Kandahar Street, Darts Buddy in BT Road and Drinks Emporium in Club Street have been ordered to close after breaching COVID-19 rules. Boom Boo was found to have a group of 14 diners split over 2 tables on January 29th, while Darts Buddy and Drinks Emporium had allowed diners to consume alcohol after 10:30 p.m.
Separately, 9 other establishments, including Chinatown Seafood in Terengganu Street and Baoting in Moss Street, were fined $1,000 each for offences including allowing groups to sit less than a metre apart and allowing diners to play billiard and pool games on their premises.
Meanwhile, 74 people have been fined for flouting COVID-19 rules at parks and beaches. 2 groups comprising more than 20 people each are also under investigation for allegedly gathering at East Coast Park and Changi Beach Park on January 30th.
Well, with university fees becoming expensive and rising student debts, even before COVID-19, some people already question the value of a university education.
And that has escalated now that the pandemic has disrupted face-to-face classes.
Well, transforming universities and how we approach university education were brought up at the ST Education Forum 2021, which was in partnership with Singapore Management University.
There have been questions about the value of university education, and the pandemic has prompted even more questioning of these trends, right? Because students are unable to attend classes face-to-face, and so there is further prompting of whether universities need to do more to reform themselves. Our approach has been not to allow external forces to disrupt us, but to proactively disrupt ourselves instead. The model of university education everywhere for a long time has been about front-loading education when someone is young. So you have a fixed period of education, and then after that, a fixed period of work. I think that model is no longer relevant today. We need to have a rotational model of learning where work and education are rotated over the course of your career. That means looking at offering part-time degrees for working adults, modular offerings that can be taken throughout one's life and which can be stacked towards a qualification later on. Second, universities must cater for multiple entry points along the entire skills spectrum, and not just focus on the cognitive. So they have to think about technical hands-on skills, industry-relevant skills, practical life skills, even social skills like relationship building, working in teams, negotiation. These are all very important.
We want students to be able to think critically, to be able to develop ideas creatively, to bring new perspectives to bear on issues and challenges, to solve problems. And this, in my view, is best done through discussion, through debate, through working on real-world projects, and often working together in groups. So when circumstances allow, I believe that this is best done in person. But there will be times, like now, when the circumstances don't allow. Let's optimize the learning experience by combining the physical classroom, the virtual classroom, and when circumstances allow, embrace the community, the workplace, the world as part of that learning environment in a balanced way.
After all, if later on in life you will have to deal with future pandemics, then this experience gives you some chance to become more resilient, more adaptable, and to learn new skills after all. So I wouldn't put too much weight on these temporary disruptions. Our focus has to be, if there is any gap, then the next generation, the next cohort will be continuously better than the previous ones, and so on and so forth. And also that each cohort not just being better, but recognizing that learning is for life and you continue to improve themselves.
Getting an education, coming to a university is not just about getting a degree. It's about what you learn. We're here to provide the opportunities. Avail yourself of the opportunities, and don't lament the fact that we're in COVID and your learning experience is different. I hope you make the best use of the learning opportunities.
Well, it was a very engaging discussion, and you can watch the whole thing later tonight at 7 p.m. The forum will be on the Straits Times' YouTube channel.
Senior Education Correspondent Sandra Devi is here to crunch the main points from this morning's panel. Sandra, welcome. Sandra, tell us, what are the big takeaways?
Of course, when the pandemic happened, the universities had to go online in a big way, delivering their education online, but also their examinations, and later on, their yearly admissions exercise as well. So there was a big discussion on the hybrid model of education going forward, whether this is likely to become more accepted, maybe even preferred. And it looks like people have adapted and adjusted to this new mode of delivery and recognized that there are benefits to be accrued. So it's likely that the universities will adopt a more hybrid model of education going forward.
Right. Well, something that I got from this forum was what Mr. Wong said about front-loading education at a young age, meaning, you know, going through the conventional route or from secondary school, JC or poly, and then university, and of course out into the working world. But he also said that this model is not relevant today. So Sandra, why is it not the best suited, especially in these times?
Well, this is something that has come up again and again in recent years, with this traditional, rather expensive 4-year degree route is suited for our needs and our times. Some would argue that what you need is shorter, more nimble, flexible courses that provide just-in-time learning because our digital economy requires us to keep upskilling and reskilling ourselves because of technological advances and because of the shorter shelf life for skills, right? So you need to keep going back to learning institutions, whether they are universities or polytechnics, to reskill and learn new things as you expand your career roles or switch from one role to another, even if you are staying in the same company. So really you should be looking at education as a lifelong thing that runs along with your career path as well. And you keep going back to different learning institutions to learn and acquire new skills.
Right. But of course, Sandra, saying it is one thing. Putting it into action is the more tedious aspect. What needs to change there in terms of, say, mindset, perspective?
Well, you're looking at sort of a non-traditional mode of education here, right? So for example, even not doing your 4 years straight undergraduate education. So when you go for your job interviews, your employers are going to ask, why is there a gap here? Why did you go out and do a startup or go to work or just do a community involvement project in the middle of your degree education? So really what employers need to do in hiring people, prospective workers, is to look at the totality of their experience that they bring, not just the degree education, but also, and their results, but also what else did they do? What other skills did they acquire? What experiences did they gain throughout their university years? And hire based on those skills and attributes, and
so
not just qualification.
Approach, right?
Yes, a lot more holistic approach. Yeah, the way universities select students these days as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sandra, for joining us today. We've been speaking to the Straits Times' senior education correspondent, Sandra Davy.
Now, she was part of the ST Education Forum 2021 with Education Minister Lawrence Wong. They talked about reimagining universities, and you can catch the whole session on our YouTube channel this evening at 7 p.m.
Well, looking at the local headlines, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat said today that helping workers and businesses to adapt, innovate and grow will be a key priority for Budget 2021. Speaking during a visit to a tech firm's R&D lab, DPM Heng also said the government will continue to support workers and businesses, especially those in hard-hit sectors. He will deliver his budget statement on the 16th of this month.
In its annual review, Enterprise Singapore said over 15,000 companies pressed on with projects last year with the agency's support, despite upheaval from the pandemic. This is 54% more than in 2019. And the efforts are expected to generate $18.4 billion in value to the Singapore economy, as well as create 22,200 PMET jobs over the next 3 years. The enterprises are mainly from the lifestyle, trade and connectivity, as well as modern services sectors.
23-year-old Tan Hong Sheng, linked to the 2019 Orchard Towers murder, pleaded guilty today to offences including 2 unrelated rioting charges. He will be sentenced on March the 5th. Tan is one of 7 people initially charged with the murder and is the final person to be convicted in a district court. Out of these 7 people, Tan Sen Yang still faces a murder charge and will be dealt with in the High Court.
The Singapore Police today warned against holding protests here in relation to recent developments in Myanmar. This follows online posts by Myanmar nationals working or residing in Singapore, planning protests and encouraging people to participate. A police statement said that foreigners who break the law will face punishments, which may include termination of visas or work passes.
Well, protests, though, are continuing in Myanmar. Footage of people in apartments banging pots and pans in protest has gone viral. Singaporean Joanne Lim, who's in Yangon, said she was, quote, honestly so moved to tears.
Singaporeans living in Myanmar told the Straits Times that military rule has made little difference to everyday life, though there is an air of uncertainty as the situation could change any time.
The president of Singapore Association Myanmar said the chaos was unnerving, but things settled after a few days. He added there are no roadblocks or large-scale violence on Yangon streets, and he's been going about with his day as usual.
Indochina Bureau Chief Tan Hui Yi joins us for an update. Hui, we last spoke on Monday, the day of the coup. What's the latest today? Protests, communications and all that?
Before today, we saw medical workers wearing red ribbons and uploading photos of themselves on social media. Some civil servants have boycotted work. and people are boycotting Mytel, which is a telco partly owned by the military. And of course, every night now, we see people bang pots and pans and whatever they can get their hands on to create as much noise as possible in protest. Today, we saw even more civil servants come out in peaceful protest by wearing these red ribbons. They included university lecturers in the University of Yangon, as well as staff at various ministries in Naypyidaw. A lot of these protests are being coordinated online. So the regime has tried to block Facebook, which resulted in many people trying to download VPNs yesterday and signing up to encrypted apps like Signal.
Right. Well, Hui, the military was in power up until 2011. Between then and Monday's coup, it controlled the ministries of defense, home affairs and border affairs, indicating its influence. So we know the military justified the coup, citing election fraud. Beyond that, though, what power plays behind the scenes could have led to the coup?
Well, the military says the state of emergency was needed because the so-called election fraud threatened Myanmar's sovereignty. Many locals saw this as a plain power grab. Commander-in-Chief Min Aung Hlaing is a powerful person in Myanmar because the constitution makes the military essentially autonomous, as well as a key part of the civilian government. Yep. The senior general was due to retire from service this year when he reaches the age of 65. It has been said that he was eyeing the presidency, but it would not have been possible through the normal route. This is because Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi's NLD party won an overwhelming victory during last November's election.
Let's talk about foreign intervention, Hui. Now, US President Joe Biden said the military should step down, and his security advisor said the administration was considering an executive order that could include sanctions. Will US sanctions work, and how might the coup affect Myanmar's economy?
I think the Western countries have very little leverage on this matter. Bear in mind that Myanmar was under direct military rule for about 50 years before 2011, and it managed to survive that time under Western sanctions. Several of the top military leaders remain under sanctions for their role in the Rohingya crisis. And also, the majority of foreign direct investment in Myanmar comes from countries that are very unlikely to impose tough measures on Myanmar because of the coup. There are countries like China, Singapore, Thailand, Japan. Having said that, a major Thai industrial park developer, Amata, has put a US $1 billion project in Myanmar on hold. And I think beyond sanctions, there is a huge amount of uncertainty about what this regime will do. Will it honor contracts that the NLD government signed? How will it run ministries? Will it tackle corruption? Already, there's some concern that the regime plans to tighten scrutiny of foreigners entering the country. And as I've said before, a lot depends on what the military does in the days ahead. It has tried at various points to block internet connections and Facebook to curb protests. But this has been highly disruptive for businesses, and it will compound the difficulties that Myanmar businesses are already facing because of COVID.
Thank you, Hui Yi, for coming on the show to share this update. That was Tan Hui Yi, Indo-China Bureau Chief for the Straits Times. Visit straitstimes.com for the latest on Myanmar.
Also in the global headlines, in its biggest move yet to overhaul the education system, Hong Kong ordered schools to adopt a new national education curriculum aimed to instill code and affection for the Chinese people, as well as to weed out teachers who breach the national security law. Announced yesterday, the measures will require primary and secondary school students to memorize the law's offences, which include subversion, secession and collusion with foreign powers. Authorities are also looking to incorporate national security education into all subjects from geography to biology.
A South Korean advisory board has recommended caution over administering AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine to people over 65 years old. This due to insufficient data. South Korea signed a deal with AstraZeneca in December to secure 20 million doses. The first shipment is expected as early as this month. When approved, it will be the first COVID-19 vaccine to be approved for emergency use in the country.
President Joe Biden can now nominate the U.S. ambassador to Singapore after withdrawing Donald Trump's pick. Mr. Trump had chosen Barbara Hale Thornhill, the president of an LA interior design firm, for the role in September 2019. The role has been vacant since January 2017, when the previous ambassador Kurt Wagger left his post following Mr. Trump's inauguration.
Well, those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I am Haryanto Diman with Olivia Kwe. Have a good weekend and we'll see you next week.